Hello students, today in this video I am going to discuss the poem The Charge of the Light Brigade written by Lord Alfred Tennyson. Lord Alfred Tennyson is one of the most popular English poets. He wrote this poem as a tribute to the honor and courage displayed by the British cavalrymen during the Battle of Balaglava. The poem has been entitled The Charge of the Light Brigade. Charge here means to attack. Light means something which is not heavy. Brigade means a group of people or a military unit. So, the charge of the Light Brigade means the charge or attack of the military unit not heavily armed. As you can see here, the background of the poem is given in your book. This poem is about the Battle of Balaglava that took place on 25th October 1854 during the Crimean War between Britain and Russia. A cavalry of British soldiers was ordered to charge down a valley surrounded by Russian cannons. Of the 673 men who charged, only 195 survived unwounded. The Battle of Balaglava took place on 25th October in the year 1854. And which two countries fought in the battle? Britain and Russia. A cavalry of British soldiers was ordered to charge down a valley surrounded by Russian cannons. Cavalry means military unit that fights riding on horses. Charge down means to attack. Valley means an area between hills or mountains. Cannon means a piece of artillery used for bombing. A big size gun mounted on wheels. Cannons were formerly used in war. This is a cannon. So, a cavalry of British soldiers or a British military unit was ordered to charge down or to attack a valley which was surrounded with Russian cannons. Russians were the opponent unit who were fighting against the British soldiers. So, the British soldiers were given an order by their commander to attack the Russians. And the valley they were going to charge down was surrounded with Russian cannons. And the British soldiers only had their swords. They had no other weapon to fight. So, it was sure that they won't be able to win against the Russians. But the British soldiers did not have any other choice than to follow the command of their senior officer. The senior officer or the commander ordered them to charge down the valley to get back their guns, which were seized by the Russians. The British soldiers were left only with their swords. They had no guns, no cannons, no artillery to fight against the Russians. They only had their swords. So the British soldiers are being called as the Light Brigade in this poem. On the other hand, the Russians were fully defensed with cannons, guns and everything. There were total 673 British soldiers who charged down the valley, and out of those 673 soldiers, only 195 soldiers could survive unwounded, means without getting any injury. The poet Alfred Lord Tennyson wrote this poem as a tribute. Tribute means to show homage or respect. This poem was written as a tribute to the honor and courage displayed by the British cavalrymen or the British soldiers. The poet glorifies the self-sacrifice and heroism of the British soldiers who fought so well in the battle, risking and sacrificing their lives. So, let's start reading the poem now. Half a league, half a league, half a league onward, all in the valley of death, rode the 600. Forward the Light Brigade, charge for the guns, he said. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Note down the important word meanings. League is an unit for measuring distance. 1 league is equal to 4.8 km. Valley means an area between hills or mountains. Rode is the past tense form of ride. Light Brigade means a military unit not heavily armed. In the first stanza, the word league is repeated 3 times. League is a unit for measuring distance. Half a league, half a league, half a league onward means the distance was about 1.5 miles. The valley that the British soldiers were going to charge down was 1.5 miles away. The 600 British soldiers were riding towards the valley to attack the Russians. Half a league, half a league, half a league onward, all in the valley of death, rode the 600. The 600 British soldiers were riding into the valley of death. The valley of death is a metaphor used here. Literally, there is nothing like valley of death, but here the valley is being called as the valley of death because the fully armed Russians were there in that valley with their guns, bombs, cannons, and all the artillery. And the British soldiers had nothing except their swords. The British soldiers were riding into that valley, means they were ultimately going to meet their death. So, the valley is being called as the Valley of Death. All the 600 British soldiers were riding into that Valley of Death, which was surrounded with Russian cannons. Forward the Light Brigade, charge for the guns, he said. He here refers to the British commander, who was giving command or order to the 600 soldiers. He said means the British commander said, "Forward the Light Brigade, charge for the guns." The British commander ordered the 600 British soldiers to move forward and attack to get back their guns, which were seized by the Russians. The unit of the British soldiers is being called as the Light Brigade because they were not heavily armed. They had no heavy weapons to fight. They only had their swords. So, here Light Brigade is referred to the unit of British soldiers. Their commander ordered them to move forward and charge for the guns. Into the Valley of Death rode the 600. The 600 British soldiers rode into the Valley of Death. Forward the Light Brigade. Was there a man dismayed? Not though the soldier knew someone had blundered. There's not to make reply, there's not to reason why, there's but to do and die. Into the Valley of Death rode the 600. Dismayed means discouraged or frightened. Blunder means a careless mistake. The commander again said to the Light Brigade, that is, to the British soldiers, to move forward. He asked, "Was there a man dismayed?" means, was there anyone who was discouraged or frightened? Not though the soldiers knew someone had blundered. The soldiers were not discouraged, but they knew that someone had blundered. Someone had made a terrible mistake. Someone here referred to the commander. And what blunder he made? The blunder was to charge down the valley, which was surrounded with Russian cannons. The soldiers knew that their commander was making a blunder, but they were bound to follow his order. There's not to make reply, there's not to reason why, there's but to do and die. Theirs means the British soldiers. The British soldiers were not allowed to make any reply or ask any question. They were bound to follow the order of their commander. They had to do or to die. Into the Valley of Death rode the 600. The 600 British soldiers rode into the Valley of Death. Cannon to right of them, cannon to left of them, cannon in front of them, volleyed and thundered, stormed at with shot and shell. Boldly they rode and well. Volleyed means many bullets, cannons, balls, etc. fired at the same time. Boldly means courageously, with confidence. When the British soldiers were going to enter the valley, they could see cannon in every side, right, left, and front. They were trapped from 3 sides. Cannons were placed by the Russians in every side. Volleyed and thundered, stormed at with shot and shell, boldly they rode and well. Many bullets, cannons, balls were fired at the same time. It came like a storm. As the British soldiers were moving forward to attack the Russians, they shot them. They started firing. It was like a storm of bullets. The British soldiers only had their swords, but still they did not lack courage. They fought boldly. They rode into the valley with full confidence, courageously. Into the jaws of death, into the mouth of hell, rode the 600. As I told you that the British soldiers were not heavily armed, they are being called as a light brigade in this poem. They were fighting only with their swords, but their opponent team, the Russians, were fully armed. They had cannons and all that, so fighting against them means ultimately meeting death. So the poet has written like this, that the 600 British soldiers rode into the jaws of death and into the mouth of hell, means they were going to face death in that battle. Flashed all their sabres bare, flashed as they turned in here, sabring the gunners there, charging an army, while all the world wondered. Plunged in the battery smoke, right through the line they broke. Cossack and Russian reeled from the sabry stroke, shattered and sundered. Then they rode back, but not the 600. Flashed means to make visible or to display. Sabres means heavy swords with carved blades. Sabring means cutting, injuring, and killing with sabres. Wondered means surprised or amazed or marveled. Plunged means jumped into something with force or moved forward suddenly. Battery smoke means smoke emitting from a number of large guns used together. Cossack means a member of any of the groups in southern Russia in the 14th century. They were known for their military skill. Sundered means split apart or broken apart by force. Reeled means to lose one's balance, to stagger. The British soldiers attacked the Russians with their swords. They flashed all their sabres, means their swords. They were sabring the gunners. Gunners here refer to the Russians, because the Russians were fighting with their guns. So here they are being called as the gunners. So the British soldiers were sabring the gunners or the Russians. The British soldiers were killing them with their swords. Charging an army while all the world wondered. The British soldier fought so bravely and courageously that the whole world wondered. The whole world was surprised, thinking how could they fought so well only with their swords. Plunged in the battery smoke, right through the line they broke. The Russians were firing their guns, cannons and all that, so it became smoky, and the British soldiers plunged means they jumped into the battery smoke and broke the line of the Russians. The Russians made a line to attack the British soldiers, but the British soldiers jumped into them and broke their line. Cossack and Russian reeled from the sabry store, shattered and sundered. The Cossack and Russians were reeled from the sabry stroke. They moved back or they become imbalanced, shattered and sundered. The Cossack and Russians become shattered. Cossack means skilled military unit of the Russians. The skilled military unit of the Russians also broke apart. They could not stand against the brave British soldiers. The British soldiers were killing them with their sabres or swords. Then they rode back, but not the 600. Then the British soldiers rode back to their place. They were coming back, but they were not 600 because most of them were killed by the Russians in the battle. Cannon to right of them, cannon to left of them, cannon behind them, volleyed and thundered, stormed at with shot and shell, while horse and hero fell. They that had fought so well came through the jaws of death, back from the mouth of hell. All that was left of them left of 600. Then the British soldiers were coming back. They rode back. Then also they were surrounded with cannons from three sides, right, left, and behind. Volleyed and thundered, stormed at with shot and shell, while horse and hero fell. The Russians were still firing guns and bullets at the British soldiers like a storm, while horse and hero fell. Hero here means the British soldiers, and the horses the British soldiers were riding on. The horses and the British soldiers fell means they were shot by the Russians. They that had fought so well came through the jaws of death, back from the mouth of hell. All that was left of them left of 600. Only those soldiers who fought so well could come back from the jaws of death and the mouth of hell. Means only those soldiers could survive and could save their lives who fought well in the battle. Only those were left out of the 600 British soldiers. Only those soldiers could save their lives. When can their glory fade? Oh, the wild charge they made! All the world wondered. Honor the charge they made. Honor the Light Brigade, Noble 600. Glory means fame or honor. Fade means decrease or vanish. Noble means great or honorable. In the last stanza, the poet glorifies the heroism and courage of the 600 British soldiers. The poet asks one question: when can their glory fade? This is actually a rhetorical question. A rhetorical question is a statement framed in the form of a question. We don't need to answer this question. Rhetorical questions are asked just to emphasize something. This is actually a statement. So this question, when can their glory fade, is a rhetorical question. The poet wants to say that the glory of the 600 British soldiers can never be fade. Their glory or fame can never be vanished or decreased. Oh, the wild charge they made, all the world wondered. Wild here means very enthusiastic or amazing or unbelievable. The British soldiers made a wild charge or a wild attack that the whole world remained surprised or amazed. Honor the charge they made. Honor the Light Brigade, Noble 600. In the last few lines, the poet appeals to the readers to honor the Light Brigade, that is, the British soldiers, and the charge they made. The poet requests us to show honor and respect to the noble 600 British soldiers who fought well in the deadly battle, risking their lives. And the poem ends here. I hope all of you have understood the poem well. Read all the word meanings and the poem thoroughly at home. Thank you.